In this episode, we're talking with Ashley, who spent most of her adult life in the animal rescue world, both in veterinary medicine and on the front lines. Back in 2012, she co-founded Sit With Me Rescue in Ottawa, focusing on dogs that were being overlooked, especially bully breeds facing breed-specific legislation. Now she runs Misfit Farmstead, a nonprofit farm sanctuary that gives a home to animals with nowhere else to go. One part of the conversation that really stayed with me was Ashley's honesty about the challenges in Northern Indigenous communities. She talks about the long history between Indigenous people and their dogs, how colonization disrupted that relationship, and how limited resources and isolation shape the realities these communities face today. It's a side of rescue most people never hear about, and she explains it with respect and nuance. She also breaks down who's doing the heavy lifting in rescue, why small grassroots groups operate so differently from large shelters, and what it actually takes to run a rescue day to day. We also get into the practical ways people can help, even if they're not ready to be involved directly in the rescue world. This episode offers an honest look at a world most of us only ever see from the outside. Enjoy.
So my name is Ashley. I am a veteran rescue person. I did rescue work for many, many years, probably most of my adult life. I've also worked in veterinary medicine for most of my adult life, and I currently have a farm, which is a not-for-profit that we help farm animals as well. So kind of my niche here is that I am very well versed in the animal world, both on the veterinary medicine side and on the rescue side.
Let's start at the heart of what we're going to talk about today. What made you get into rescue in general?
When I was a kid, I grew up with animals. I just always had like a really strong affinity to animals, and it just seemed like a space that I could help in when I was young. Like I started fostering cats from the Humane Society when I was like 18, like as soon as I was old enough to do it. That just seemed like something I really liked doing. And then I got into fostering dogs. And then, you just kind of snowballs and you get into like, I want to do more because I felt like I had the capacity to do it and the knowledge to do it. And then I got into like actually running a rescue as I got older. And then, once I had like my own house and stuff like that, I could do a lot of these extra things. But really it was just, I really love animals. I really love helping animals. And this felt like the way that I could make a difference with the resources that I had. So
you mentioned that you started your own rescue. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in 2012, myself along with a few other people started a rescue called Sit With Me Rescue. And it was mostly to fill a need that wasn't being filled at the time in the Ottawa community, to focus on shelter dogs. So dogs in the shelter system who were otherwise being overlooked by the shelter system itself or by other rescues. So that was kind of where it came from. It was also really focused on bully breed dogs, because at the time breed-specific legislation was still really, really was being enforced a lot more than it is now. Like now it's pretty much not enforced except for in certain communities, but it was at the time, and there was a really big need for rescues who could help bully breed dogs who would otherwise be euthanized in the shelter system. So.
Oh wow! Yeah. So I didn't realize that's where Sit With Me started.
Yeah, started from the wanting to help shelter dogs, and we did a lot of bully dogs at the beginning, like a lot. That was really what was coming out of the shelters. There was a ton in the community, ton ending up in the shelters, and literally no one helping them. So that's kind of where we started, and then it expanded over the years to helping like all breeds. We wanted to do all breeds. We didn't want to focus just on bully breeds. There was a big need for them at the time, but we also wanted to do like dogs of all different breeds, which we, expanded into and did. And, the rescue now is what it is. It's, it's not breed discriminate. It helps whatever dogs need help based on the resources available.
So when you look at rescue now, who would you say is doing most of the heavy lifting to save animals that are in need in general, like not just bullies, but like any animal?
Yeah, I think it's grassroots organizations for sure. So you've got like small scale rescues in general started and done by women. And so it's definitely the shelters are doing good work. I'm not like discounting the need for shelters, but shelters are profit based in a lot of ways. And so when you end up having a lot of animals who fall outside of like the, what shelters can offer, and it's always grassroots organizations picking up the slack.
So I'm sure a lot of the public don't understand this, but how are shelters for profit?
Yeah.
A lot of people probably think that, well, no, they're charity.
Yeah.
So
if you look at like the Ottawa Humane Society, so they have, so first of all, they have a contract from the city of Ottawa where they get the fees from like your licensing. They also run the municipal animal shelter for the city. They have that as like a way to make money. They also, make money off adoption fees and donations. But in general, their organization is run by a CEO. It's run by a board of directors who are mandated to ensure that the shelter remains profitable. They don't ever want to be at a loss, right? Like they don't ever want to not be making money or not covering their costs. So that is like the overall driver. So when you end up with animals who are going to cost a lot of money or maybe who are going to need a lot more resources than the average pet, Phoebe agrees, then those animals oftentimes are either not considered, a good use of resources. So they will either end up euthanized or they will, send them to rescue and then expect rescue to take over those costs. So, the Humane Society, while it does a lot of great programs, it does really good work. I'm not discounting the work that they do. It's just not the same as a grassroots organization where like quite literally the people running grassroots organizations are doing it out of their own pockets. There is no profit model. It's literally just trying to make ends meet and survive and help as many animals as they can. And it's all volunteer run. So, at shelters, people are paid, they have salaries and their executives have salaries. In grassroots organizations, you don't see that. So
I'm going to rewind to something that you said earlier, is that you said that women are usually the people carrying the weight for rescue. Why do you think that is?
Well, in general, women do compassion work, whether it's child rearing or taking care of elderly parents, or you'll even look at professions like teaching and nursing, daycare. All of that is dominated by women. It's no surprise that women also do the heavy lifting when it comes to like animal rescue or animal care, even shelter work. It's almost always women. It's just part of our nature. But it's also a good reflection of like how women are treated in society when it comes to like unpaid labor, because even women just tend to fill those roles because we are compassionate beings and this is just something that we do as women, but it's unpaid labor too, right? So like men don't do this stuff because it's unpaid labor. And I'm not saying that no men do this or men in rescue for sure, but the majority of people carrying the weight of doing the work are women. And in general, it's middle-class women, and that's like a class issue, considering that middle-class women in general have the resources to do rescue. So you need stable housing, you need like a little bit of, disposable income, you need extra time, you need to have the networks, the support systems. And in general, that's middle-class women. And if you're looking at like, women who are wealthy, those types of women and men don't participate in the grassroots organizations in general. They are most likely, or more often, part of the donor class, right? They're the ones giving the money but not doing any of the work. So it is definitely a reflection of like a larger systemic issue that we see in all aspects of, of society, in all aspects of our daily life, right? Like, It's just that you find women in the spots where you have to do things based on compassion, even if your labor is unpaid for it, right? Like there's no reward for people doing grassroots rescue other than a lot of stress and a lot of, and yes, there's reward and like, yes, you get to help animals and stuff, but like the burden is far heavier, far heavier.
Yeah, because there's even sometimes because I'm also been in rescue for a very long time, and there's sometimes where I get a call or I get a text about a dog and I'm exhausted in my life for whatever reason, work, kids, marriage, having issues, whatever it is. And I will take that dog no matter what state I'm in, and I will deal with that dog even though I don't have it in me to do it.
Right.
because no one else is going to do it.
Right.
And that dog is going to die. And it's just, you're totally right. I will put myself in a really hard emotional and physical position sometimes.
Yeah.
Because nobody else will do it.
Right. And I think as women, like, we're taught that is like our natural state of being, that we always have to be overextended.
Can you walk us through what it's like for the rescue when you get a call and says, hey, this dog needs help? Like, how do you make that decision? And what is it like to say no?
Yeah. So, I mean, typically it's either a Facebook message, or yes, like a vet clinic might be calling, or one of our, like, one of the shelter partners that's asking, for help. And usually, like, there is kind of like a process, over the years, because there's so much need, and like, just like from experience, the rescues had to make decisions about what types of dogs they help and what types of dogs they don't help. And the types of dogs that you help are like, dogs who are going to be safe family pets. That's really like the only real requirement, is that they are going to be safe family pets. So like, the rescue is to help dogs with a lot of behavior challenges. And over the years, it's become very obvious that those are the types of dogs that don't do well, in rescue, in the sense that they, oftentimes have behavior challenges that are not conducive to adoption. Right. So then they end up either staying in rescue for a really long time, or, they end up being a behavioral euthanasia, which is a horrible thing to have to go through. So the rescues are always being asked to make those decisions when the dogs are coming out of shelters. And the shelters should be the ones making that decision as to whether or not those dogs are going to be safe animals, safe pets. Because really, that's all that matters, right? Like, a dog can have a health challenge, most dogs can live with the types of health challenges that they have, unless it's like catastrophic. Yeah. At which point the shelters in general will euthanize those types of animals, right? Like dogs with like critical injuries, or like, horrible health conditions that are just they're not going to live very long anyways.
It's compassionate,
right?
To put them down.
Right, exactly, right? But dogs who have like just like long-term health issues, like diabetes, or they might have, they might have eye issues, or, they might need dental work, or they have a lump that needs to come out, like simple things like that, or things that can be, they can still live, relatively, normal lives with some medical intervention.
So yeah, like, you don't want to take a pet, adopt it out, and feel good about it, and then find out that, hey, that person ended up in the hospital with some severe injuries.
Right. Like, safety is always number one. Always number one. And like I said, like, there are dogs who are going to need management with other dogs. There's going to be dogs who need management with cats, or, management with children. And those are not like necessarily things that you can't overcome or find adopters for, but like dogs who are going to be safe with people in general, right? Yeah. Dogs are not going to be a bite risk. So that's like the number one thing. If they meet that, then there's other things to consider, like what resources are available, like, is it financially viable to help a dog with a really big, who's got a lot of medical needs, That's another thing, because you also don't want to bring a dog into rescue where you can't vet them properly. Yeah. So that's another thing. And what foster homes you have available, right? Like, not every foster can take every dog. And a lot of fosters are specific about the types of dogs that they take. And like, dogs have needs. Do they bark? Then they can't go in an apartment. Are they high energy? Then they need a backyard. So there's like a lot of things to consider. But in general, like, when you get asked to take on a dog, you can kind of tell within like the message that you get whether or not that's going to be a dog you have the resources to help. So yeah, it sucks to say no for sure, but it's like a necessary evil, right? Like, at some point you can't help everything, and so you want to help the most amount of dogs that you can with what you have available to you. Yeah.
So what would that look like? Say that you get a message in, and you guys are going to have I guess there's a board, right?
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, rescues have boards. Everyone has a job. And it's run not just by a couple people when it's a charity status. It's actually run by a group of people, because that's what the government mandates these rescues with charity status to do. Right. So what would that look like for you guys if you get an email in and you go, we got to discuss this?
Yeah. So usually that's exactly what happens. So you get like an email or a message or whatever, and then plead your case, essentially, if you want this dog, and advocate for the dog. And people chime in with their concerns, or, whether or not, yes, we can absolutely help this dog, or I have concerns. Can we address these concerns before we decide to intake the dog? And those are pretty much it. The conversations happen fast. So they happen like within, an hour or so. And so, I think everybody in rescue kind of knows, like, if there's a case that comes up that's really urgent and you know that in general, everybody's going to be agreeable to helping that animal, sometimes you can decide kind of on your own that that's the right choice to make. But as like a rule, it's discussed as like, what do we have available resource-wise to help this animal? And I would say like the majority, like when it's really, really urgent, it's usually an emergency vet. That's a really common way for rescue to get dogs, is that people go to the vet with a sick animal, they can't afford care or treatment, and then the veterinarians there will, ask the owners if they would consider rescue over euthanasia. My dog Darling that's how I got her.
Who's here?
Yes. So she was brought to Ottawa Vet. She was 2 years old. She was brought to Ottawa Vet and was facing euthanasia because she had bladder stones, and the owners did not want to pay for the treatment, and they wanted to euthanize her. And Ottawa Vet, thank goodness, stepped in and said, no, thank you. We're pretty sure we can find her rescue. I got a text message from someone saying, can you please help her? And we took her into care, and that was that. She's literally the best dog I've ever owned. So
pugs are hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm very thankful for that, and I'm very thankful to vet clinics for reaching out. But yeah, that's a pretty common way.
What's one moment that reminds you why you're doing this?
My own dogs, I would say. I have 9 dogs. All of them are from rescue. All of them.
You have 9 dogs?
We have 9 dogs.
When did you get 9 dogs?
For so long, what happens, you accumulate dogs over the years, Yeah, I have, they are all sit with me dogs except for 2. I have 2 French bulldogs who are from rescue, but not sit with me. Yeah, no, I have a bunch of seniors, and then I have a bunch of middle-aged dogs, and then...
So it's obvious that rescue can be full of joy.
Yes.
Heartbreak as well. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, can you help our listeners understand what part of rescue just doesn't make social media, or doesn't really, people just don't talk about it?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of stress behind the scenes, and it's like, with social media, people don't want to know that people are struggling behind the scenes. They just want to hear the happy news. They just want to hear that, oh, we saved this dog. It's amazing. We're so happy. But like, saving dogs is really important, but it always comes at an emotional cost, because it's always the stress of, can we raise the money to actually help this dog? Can we find the right fosters for these dogs? And then you always get asked, it's a never-ending need. So yes, you help one dog and people are really excited about it, but then you have 10 other dogs in the wings who don't get the same type of attention, or who don't have the same type of support from supporters in general. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just very much, some dogs are really, really popular and get tons of donations and stuff, and it's great, amazing. But then you have, 10 other dogs who are just as wonderful, who don't get any attention. There's a lot of, I think, of that background stress that people don't understand or appreciate, and it's really hard to explain to people unless you're in it.
Yeah.
Unless you see just how hard you have to work just to make a buck, just to like get some money for the dogs, just so that you can have a little bit of money to make sure that you can help more dogs and help the dogs you already have.
Sad.
It is.
Why do you think that some of the dogs just don't get any attention?
I think it's just people attach themselves to certain stories and certain breeds of dog. So like, you get a really cute poodly thing. I don't know. I don't know if poodles are very popular, but, or like you get something like really like a really popular breed in general, and people like rally behind them, they want to like help them. And then you have like our little mixed breed potcakes who are like super amazing dogs, and they get like no attention because people just don't value maybe mixed breed dogs as much as they value single bred dogs, which is silly, but it's again like a reflection of a larger societal issue. It's really like the struggles of always balancing the next emergency against wanting to help as many dogs as you can. So like you want to help a lot of dogs, but that there's another emergency just around the corner,
Yeah.
So you've got to balance having money in the bank and balance, not having too much money in the bank because you want to help dogs. I'd say like that is probably the most stressful dynamic of it. And of course you're dealing with people, fosters, right?
Different personalities,
yeah. Right? Like it's a lot of people management that I don't think people looking outside in would really understand or know off the bat. You're always dealing with, you put a dog in a foster home and it doesn't work out, and then that turns into an emergency, and that's something you have to deal with, moving that dog out of the space. But where are you going to move it? You don't have, so the dog either ends up in your home, which is an additional stressor, right? Or you're like trying to find something that's going to work out while also dealing with the dynamic of with that foster home. So
yeah,
that is very, very stressful.
Yes.
Yeah. It's overwhelming. And I think
it's actually one of the parts of rescue that I don't enjoy.
Exactly. I would agree with that. And like, there are lots of amazing foster homes out there, but there are also a lot of people who start to foster, who get into fostering, think that it's going to be like this super easy process. And it's really hard, and there's a lot of patience required. Fosters just get overwhelmed. Instead of being like an asset, they end up being a burden, you know?
Well, they don't do the rule. Right. 3 hours,
right.
3 days,
right.
3 weeks,
right.
3 months.
Right.
And they just think that a dog comes to your house and just decompresses right away. Right. And that is not the case.
Right.
Or I've also heard, well, it's not cuddling me. Well, it just came from a plane ride from Barbados, or it just came from a shelter. It needs quiet places its nervous system is totally out of whack. Yeah. So it's also education, right? And then you try to educate, and sometimes they catch on. If they're new, you want to help them get better so they can keep helping. Yeah. But some people just get the wrong idea right from the get-go of what it is.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
It is super overwhelming. I think that is by far the most challenging, is people management, which I don't know that the outside world really knows exists, right?
Yeah.
For rescue. They think it's just, dogs come in, dogs go out, or they think you have a kennel, like that. That's not reality. You know? Like,
no, there's no kennel.
No.
Even though it would be great.
Yeah.
But, where are we going to find that magic money tree?
Right. And like also like, managing vet appointments, and like you've got dogs, they need vaccines and they need spades and neuters, and you have to manage all that, and then their adoptions, and it's very, very overwhelming.
Yeah. I'd really like to loop back to what you were saying about dogs being a commodity, or like there's a huge issue with the business of breeding. Could you shed a little light on that and kind of get into how that relates to rescue?
Yeah, so I mean, for as long as animals have been seen as, a production, like part of production, they've been exploited in that capacity. I mean, farm animals is a good example of that, being that they are like the most exploited animals that exist on this planet. With factory farming, just industrial scaled farming, there's been a real breakdown between what we consider selling things that have feelings and emotions and that need care for profit. That just extends into people want certain breeds of dogs. So you end up with, puppy mills who are like these mass scale producers of dogs, and who hold no liability or no responsibility for the amount of animals that they put out into society. And then you have small scale breeders who breed for purpose, who breed either for, maybe they breed for, for conformation, like they have show dogs, or they are breeding for sports. That's a big thing, breeding for dog sports, breeding for let's say protection or police or things like that. Like there are purpose bred dogs for that. And that's a whole category of breeding. And then there's also, you have people who are breeding because they are breeding dogs because they are trying to supplement their own incomes, right? Like they're poor, or they are really struggling, and that's an easy way for them to make money. But in the end, all you have is a bunch of dogs being pushed out into society with no mechanism to catch the excess other than shelters and rescue. So all of the excess, whether it's, by their own creation or not, and then they end up in the shelter systems, they end up in rescue. And so at the end of the day, the people catching all the excess are doing it in general for free. And yes, shelters do catch quite a bit of it, but if you're looking at large scale breeding operations, the majority of those dogs are being sold, just flipped on Kijiji, or, sold to families who can't care for them, or sold to people who just want a dog for a month and then get rid of them. And then where do they end up?
Yeah.
It's really, the commodification of animals has been like, it's just an extension of our commodification of farm animals. We don't even see farm animals as beings. We just see them as food, or we see them as products. You've met farm animals. They are living, breathing, wonderful creatures who have personalities and feelings and who have needs that need to be met. It's that disconnect, intentional disconnect that's happened over decades, removing people from the farm, removing people from interacting with animals in a meaningful way that allows for this extension into pets.
It's actually really sad.
It's super sad.
As you said, even farm animals, like a lot of people don't even value them as even, they're not even worthy enough to have a proper living space. You just put them in a cage, or you just feed them constantly and then kill them because it makes them, taste better.
Right.
It's just people are truly disconnected from the realities of it. And it's not good to say, like, be vegan. Like, I'm not saying that.
No.
What I'm saying is have compassion.
Right.
No matter what the animal's purpose is, when it comes into this world, you can still show a meat bird compassion and give it a good life until you eat it. But, there's just, I find that people just don't have no compassion for anything other than people.
Right. And even at that, I mean, people don't have compassion for people, like.
Yeah. What part of rescue has brought on, like, the biggest emotional toll for you?
When I was in the thick of it, emotionally, which was the most draining part of it was definitely people management, because you're always dealing with other people's emotions. Just seeing the amount of suffering that exists is also incredibly overwhelming. Knowing that you are doing something, but it's not enough is really awful, especially like when it comes to like northern communities in Canada. There's a lot of a really, really big need there that's not being filled in any kind of meaningful way, knowing that there's so much suffering that's happening there, just that area, but also like when you help animals abroad too, right? There's so much suffering. And that is really overwhelming. You just know you're never going to do enough.
Well, can you get into that? So let's talk about northern communities. And we're talking about reservations, right? And Indigenous people of Canada.
Yeah.
Could you get into a little bit about the suffering that they do have up there? Because I don't think a lot of people understand what the real issue is on reservations and how they're managing their animal issues.
So in Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario, or Northern Canada in general, people don't know just how isolated those communities are in general. There's not a lot of infrastructure, so there's no, there's not a lot of roads as a basis. A lot of those communities don't even have access to clean drinking water. There's a lot of poverty, and there's also no access to medical care for people and for animals. And that's a huge, huge issue, because what's happened is that, Indigenous communities have always lived with dogs. They've always had dogs. Like when you look at sled dogs in the Arctic, right? Like the Inuit, they use dogs for a lot of things. And when Canada was colonized, one of the main ways that they did to disenfranchise, but also really try to destroy Indigenous culture, was killing off a lot of their dogs.
Why would they want to do that?
It's a colonization tactic in the United States. There's no bison in the United States because when they colonized the United States, they wanted to basically take away any evidence of their way of being, the Indigenous people, and they killed all the bison. But they did that here in Canada too.
But to their dogs.
Other animals too, but yes, to their dogs, like a lot of dogs, yeah. The RCMP is very much the culprit for that, right? Like they were the ones who, the RCMP was created to police Indigenous communities, but they go out and they still to this day do a lot of dog shoots.
How do they make that make sense to the public? Or did the public not even realize that they go out there?
People don't know, But
care. Why do they shoot them? Just because are they saying they're violent dogs or aggressive to the communities? Like, is that the...
So they have a roaming dog problem in most Indigenous communities where there are essentially wild dogs. They're domesticated, they're domestic dogs, but they've never lived with people, so they are born and, have been generationally living in packs of dogs. They are extremely dangerous. Children in Indigenous communities are something like 800 times more likely to be bitten by a dog than children in non-Indigenous communities. When you look at dog bite stats, almost all of them happen in Indigenous communities. Children are mauled by, and people, adults too, but children are mauled by these dogs.
Is that based on the pack mentality of these dogs? Like they see something, they go for it together and they...
Yeah. Pack mentality, right? They are essentially wild. And it's hard, not all of them are. So if you're a kid and you're playing in a community, you might see a dog, it might look harmless to you. And then all of a sudden there's 20 dogs. And now you're in big trouble. And so that is what happens. And so because there's no vet care, so you can't spay neuter dogs. There's no mechanism for that. There's no vaccines, so these dogs, there's no rabies, thank goodness, in those communities.
How is there no rabies?
They're just so far north, it's just not in those communities.
Okay.
Thank goodness for that. There's not been a case of rabies in those communities for decades. But there's no vaccine. So like these dogs, you know, if there's parvo that goes through it, all those dogs get it. Distemper, things like that. There are disease, parasites. Oh, parasites.
Mange.
Worms, like intestinal parasites. There's no mechanism to control the population other than to just kill them. But of course it does nothing, right? Because you're not going to get all of them. They reproduce very quickly. Yeah. And so in a year you might kill, you know, they might go into the community and kill, you know, 100, 200 dogs. And then in 2 years, you've got the same problem. So they're never addressing the underlying issue, which is that they need access to vet care. They need spay-neuter clinics. That would literally change the face of the community. Still allow dogs to be community dogs, because it's a big thing in Indigenous communities. They have dogs that are community dogs that just don't live.
And they treat them well.
Right. And
they are treated well. They just don't have access to medical. Right. So that's a big misconception.
Yeah.
The dogs are treated well up there. Yeah. It's a part of their community.
Right.
It's just they can't treat their dogs up there.
They can't, but also they face food insecurity, right? Yeah. As like just general, a person living there, food is really expensive and it's not reliable. Can you imagine dog food? Imagine cat food. It's even more unreliable. So you have all these barriers. And again, like no access to clean water. These animals are constantly exposed to contaminated water. So they're getting parasites. They're sick all the time. The only mechanism that exists right now to help those dogs is either rescues go and they take dogs out of the communities, right? Like they'll take puppies from roaming dog populations and then bring them into like and adopt them out locally. Or you have dog shoots, and you have, you know, either councils who organize dog shoots and they hire people there within their communities to go and kill dogs, which is highly traumatic, by the way, for the community itself, as well as you're asking someone to do something really, really inhumane. But also, you know, then, or you have the cops, the RCMP going out and doing it, right? Which is also super inhumane. It's not, there's no solution, and the solution is really easy, you know. Give people access to these things, but people in those communities don't even have access to healthcare for themselves.
Because there's been times where I work with some girls, amazing women out of Montreal, and they will drive to the northern communities to help. And a couple times the girls have told me that whenever they do go in, usually before winter, because that's when a lot of the dogs do die as well because of weather elements up there. The Indigenous which they have to get special permission, which you have to. That's absolutely, it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And then they'll have people from the community come with guns to protect these women when they go into the dumps and they go into the forest, because they go into the dens, because the dogs do make dens, and they take the puppies. Yeah. And they do try to take the mothers too, but they're usually you can't catch them. They're wild, as you said, and you don't want to get mauled. Yeah. And sometimes they got to shoot dogs because as they're going in to take the puppies to save them from the weather elements and have a better life, they're also getting attacked. Yeah. And they're very thankful that they do go up there and do that. But you're talking about 4 women out of Montreal that do this. We rent the vans from Home Depot. Yeah. If we're lucky, we'll have a vet go. Yeah. And then sometimes the vets do go up there and you have to have special certification, I think, for quick spay-neuter, right? Yeah. And they'll go up there and they'll do a clinic. But as I said, you're talking about just a couple women out of Montreal that are going up to one reserve. And
the thing is, that the solution is so simple. The solution is the government, who has the money, who has the resources, who has all that stuff, should be providing for these communities, as they should for all Canadians, access to basic needs, right? If the biggest danger in these communities is roaming dogs for children, then it's the government's responsibility, who take our tax dollars, to then go and ensure that the systemic problem is solved, right? But they can't even give them clean drinking water. They absolutely could. The government could give Indigenous communities clean drinking water the same way they can give them good infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. They choose not to.
I wonder why.
Yeah, they choose not to.
That's a big question I've wondered. Why not? It comes down to money.
It's complicated, for sure, but it's very easy to fix, and it's just there's no will to do so politically. There's no will to do so, and that's what's really unfortunate. And I think also Indigenous communities are deeply failed by their like band leaders and things like that too, who don't advocate for these things and who don't prioritize the needs of their community. I'm not saying all bands, but there are a lot of bands that are like this, that don't prioritize the needs of their community over their own political achievements, right? Those remote communities, Sit With Me helps a lot of dogs from Manitoba through Save a Dog Network, which does really, really good work. It's one woman doing like servicing all of the fly-in communities, getting 40,000 pounds of food to multiple flying communities in Manitoba, right?
Can you share her info just quickly for the
it's Save a Dog is what it's called. She's on Facebook. Katie runs it. I can't remember. I think it's Save a Dog Network. But if you look at, they're based out of Winnipeg, but she helps flying communities. She has like a huge network in all these, like we're talking about like Churchill, right? Like where the polar bears are. These are really remote.
It goes back to one person.
One person, Katie.
Woman.
Yeah, one woman. Yeah, and she's right now working on raising $150,000 to build a mobile spay-neuter clinic so that they can go to these remote flying communities and just do huge spay-neuter. They already do this.
Is the government involved?
No, of course not. All of it is being raised by just little single donations, right?
It's ridiculous.
But like, she does get donations, thank goodness, for pet food. Like Mars did a huge donation of food for her to those communities, which is great. Katie helped when there was the big forest fires in, was it Pugistawan? I can't pronounce it. Anyways, it was Katie who helped all those dogs get out.
Wow.
And helped feed those dogs.
What an amazing woman. Right? I bet she's exhausted.
Tell me about it, right? And that's all she does. Like, and that's it, right? Like, that's her passion is just helping these communities. And she helps the people there too. Like, it's not exclusive to the dogs. She understands that, like, in order to help the dogs, you have to help the people.
Can you share a time in rescue where you had to make an impossible decision?
I mean, I'm a very pragmatic person, so I think that helps. I'm very good at compartmentalizing rescue from, like, my emotions, maybe to a fault, but I am good at that.
That's from years of...
Right, from years of working.
Your skin gets so thick. Like, even with me, I found, like, I'm a completely different person when it comes to even looking at dogs. Yeah. It just changes your mind a little bit. It really does.
It changes your whole outlook.
Yeah.
I mean, I think probably when you're faced with behavioral euthanasia, I think that's the hardest decisions you have to make is always like, well, what if? What if we just tried this? What if we just tried that? And I think that understanding that, like, not all dogs are savable. And if we lived in a perfect world where we had endless resources, maybe, but like we don't live in that world and we have to be responsible. I think that's changed my outlook on how I view relationship between dog and people too. I can now, I can view, maybe before I started doing rescue, I probably viewed it as like every dog you could save. I certainly don't feel that way now. Mm-hmm. And I think like there's a place for behavioral euthanasia for dogs who are unsafe and dogs who wouldn't have quality of life anyways. It really sucks, but we have to work within the world that we live in. We don't live in a world where everything is easy and we have access to endless resources. We have to look at it and like putting resources in a dog that, is dangerous when those resources could go to a dog who's not. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how it's changed my whole view of the world, and not view of the world, but view of dog rescue and dog interactions with people. At some point, you have to just kind of view it for what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's a big shakeup in someone's world. I'll share a story, actually, when I was with Sit With Me. It actually changed me profoundly when it came to rescue. It actually, I'll say it made it easier. Yeah. But there was a dog in a shelter, and I used to go, and I was learning how to assess. And I went in, and there was this dog that on the paper, we get the piece of paper that tells us a little bit about the dog because they're too busy to hold your hand as you're doing assessments. They just tell you the dog's in here. Go and see the dog. And I went in with somebody who was training me, and on the piece of paper it said that the dog bit a child. I remember thinking, okay, well, maybe the child did something. So we go in to see the dog, and the dog's completely shut down, sitting in a corner. You can tell that you can't approach the dog, but the person who was training me taught me what to do. So we sat there with the dog, and we waited for the dog to show a sign that it was okay to put the leash on to take the dog outside to really get a good idea of her. Yeah. And just looking at the dog, you can tell the dog didn't have a good life. Like, there was more to that story than the dog just bit the kid. No, this dog was abused, and it was likely in protection mode, but it's turned into the dog's likely dangerous. Yeah. But I didn't realize that at that point. I was thinking, you can save anything. Yeah. So we bring the dog outside, and she kind of warmed up to me, and it was very emotional. And I sat there with that dog for about an hour outside, and then back into its cage area. It actually was a nice area, spacious area, so the dog wasn't like being mistreated. And I remember leaving and advocating to the board, I want to save this dog. And everybody that's had way more years than me said, no, Brittany, we can't. It has a bite history. It's not a good idea. But I had a fit. And eventually the board decided, okay, we'll give it a go. And then one member, I want to say to her actually right now, thank you for trying. She found placement for this dog, but it had to be transported. So we sent another member of Sit With Me to go pick up the dog.
Yeah.
And the dog was waiting there. And when the transporter went up to the dog, it bit her. And then the shelter, obviously at that point, couldn't release the dog.
Yeah.
And the dog was euthanized.
Yeah.
And I remember for months after that just going through my head and saying, if I was only there, if something, what if? But then I realized this dog, it was compassionate to euthanize this dog. And she stuck with me all these years to remind me that almost because of I almost want to say selfishness about it, I could have put so many people, I did put my coworker in rescue in danger, trying to pick up this dog because I, somehow convinced everyone it was doable, even with all of their experience. And I put her in jeopardy. I put the shelter in jeopardy, and whoever would have received that dog in jeopardy. And it's true, you can't save them all, and you shouldn't. Sometimes you have to do it for the greater good of the community. But it also comes down to society. Why are these dogs coming out like that? They're not born like that.
No.
I don't care what breed okay, maybe there are some breeds, but like that are more susceptible to becoming like that. But it's a people problem. What are you doing to that dog to get them there? And then when push comes to shove, okay, just give the dog to the shelter. They'll figure it out.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, look at me, all this trauma that I've got all these years later because of that person's decision.
Right. Yeah.
And to this day, if I was ever in a position where a voting member of any kind of board, I would always vote, unfortunately, sad to say, to euthanize a dangerous animal.
And I have, so I have a funny story about my other pug that I have. His name is JR. And he was at the shelter. He was actually brought to a different rescue. A different rescue took him. And then in that foster home, he was intact at the time. And he was humping the guy's leg. And the guy pushed him off, and JR snapped at him. Oh. And so, anyways, the dog ended up with me. And so I was like, whatever. So, I get it because, I love JR. And JR is a lovely dog. I would trust him with everybody. Don't do his nails. Don't do his...
Well, you know him now, right?
Yeah.
That's not behavioral. That's just, triggers? I don't know. Manageable, though.
Yeah,
right?
That's it, right?
Small
And
dog
that's it.
too.
Exactly. He's a pug, and, he's got no teeth. He had all his teeth removed because they were rotting out of his face. And, he loves children. He loves dogs. He loves people in general. He just can't do certain things. There's definitely, a threshold for, what is acceptable. But, yeah, it's the can you interact with this dog safely? If you can't even interact with the dog safely under, very minimal interaction, that's a red flag.
Yeah, sitting down. You'll see on TikTok.
Putting a leash.
Yeah, and a
collar, right?
And she did come and kiss me a little bit, but that was because I knew I was with an experienced person, and I signed a waiver pretty much. If I get mauled, I get mauled. And that was under a very controlled environment, and it was scary.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've only ever, doing assessments, I'd only ever been bit once. And it was by a big, shepherdy roddy thing. And it was putting on its collar. That,
That's basic.
Yeah, exactly, right? And she almost broke my wrist. That was, the first time I'd ever really, been afraid. And ever, every assessment I did after that, I'm way more cautious. Because,
you learn.
Yeah, you, when you don't have interactions like that, and then all of a sudden you do, you have to be way more skeptical,
Because keep in mind, and I think this is another thing that the public don't understand is, people assess these dogs, and the people assessing these dogs are putting themselves in danger. So, and
for no, and like I said, no pay. We do it all out of the goodness of our hearts, and
we're just trying to save a life.
Right, exactly. If you get injured, it's on you. It's not on anybody else.
For anyone that wants to get involved in rescue or help rescue, what are some real things that people can do that are attainable,
Yeah.
that people can do to support rescue and maybe change the way that society is treating animals.
Yeah, I think the number one thing you can do is support grassroots organizations. Like I said, Humane Society has a purpose, obviously, but they get like huge donations. Like they get estates willed to them. They don't need your $20. But $20 to a grassroots organization, whether it's a dog, cat, or any type of animal rescue, is a big deal because that money is like directly going to help dogs and cats in your community. And I think that that's really helpful if like you can't volunteer, or you can't foster, or you can't do all those things, which a lot of people can't. Fine. But if you want to know where how to make a difference, I think donating to grassroots organizations is really important. And then the other thing is just be mindful of what, how you consume things, like you don't have to be vegan or vegetarian to help farm animals, but like even reducing your meat consumption by a little bit, instead of eating meat every day, maybe eat meat every other day, or like, cutting out, the worst of the worst, like, the hog farming industry is just an absolute abomination, cutting out pork, or cutting out or like only eating beef very rarely. That can have a meaningful impact. You won't see it, but like it definitely the less that's consumed, the less it's produced.
I think that society's lost that, where you just go to the store and you buy whatever's there and you don't really look into where it came from or what's in it.
Right.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But what do you think rescues would like the public to understand about fundraising and how donations help sustain their practices?
Fundraising is also a labor of love. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to ask people for money all the time, but also then to like incentivize people to give money, setting up events or like, doing things for people, like doing like a trivia night or like an event, a pet store event. Like that's a lot of effort from not only the rescue itself, but also like from the volunteers. So, supporting those things is really important because rescues don't want to just give us your money. They want people to get something out of it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's also like a really important thing to know is, yes, rescues will ask for money all the time, but it's also because they're always poor. They always need money, and there's always somebody or something that needs help. So that is really why. It's not like rescues sit on a giant pool of money. They literally spend everything they have.
As fast as it comes in, it goes out.
It's gone. Yeah, exactly. So like you see an event that like, you like or you want to support, do it. Rescues don't want, not that they don't want, they appreciate the people who come out to everything, but it's really nice to diversify. It's really nice to have new people come out to things, to introduce themselves or just support in whatever way. Like that's a really nice thing to feel like you're reaching new people and a new audience. So yeah, even if a rescue is doing an event that maybe you can't donate to or just showing up and being there and asking questions. Yeah, for sure.
Because I find a lot of the issues with animals these days is a lack of education.
Yes.
So it's a chance to educate. It's a chance to have to have communication about it, and almost like a town hall. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So
and talk to your friends about it, or talk to your family about it. Right. Like the way ideas grow and become more prevalent in society is by people talking about it. Talk about these things. There is a problem here, so talking about it really helps. Like I said, not everybody wants to get involved in rescue, and I totally understand that.
Me too.
Yeah, totally understand that. But if this is something you care about and is meaningful for you and you want to help, there are ways that you don't have to get involved directly, but that you can make a difference. And I think those are, just if you show up for events, especially bigger stuff, like if a rescue's putting on a dinner or something that takes a lot of time and energy,
galas, golf tournaments.
Even if you don't really want to do anything other than that, just going is a really nice thing. I know people are shy and antisocial, but in general, the rescue community is nice people, and you have common goals. If you care about animals, that's all that matters. It's a common goal, right? So, and that's enough to start a conversation.
Totally. So. And you know what I found too is that a lot of people who are feeling lonely. Mm-hmm. If you are a lonely person out there and you want to make new friends, I'll tell you, the rescue community is where it's at.
Yeah.
It's like you'd have something to do every weekend.
Yeah. And you meet people from all walks of life, and you get really interesting perspectives and you get to learn about people's experiences, and you might get to meet some cute dogs or cats or whatever you're doing, and We run, like, our farm is a not-for-profit. And so, like, our goal is to eventually get to a point where we can do more outreach and education, particularly, like, for farm animals. The majority of people come visit our farm. They just want to know about stuff, you know? They just want, because most people don't know anything about farm animals or farming in general.
Bring your kids, because I find that change happens with the youth. So if you're a parent, what's your farm's called?
It's called Misfits Farmstead.
Google Misfits and bring your kid out to meet the farm animals. I brought my kids out there and they loved it.
Yeah, and our farm is like, we've been really like focused making sure our animals are really kid friendly. Even our cows are kid friendly. Like, you know, we have lots of them. Like, we're we know the risks and stuff, so we make sure we keep kids safe, of course. But like, we have.
I think when I was there, the only animal that you controlled was Buzz. What I liked about your farm, just to sum it up with Misfits, is that literally all your animals, except for your pigs, live together.
Yes.
And I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And like, you see turkeys walking around with so many. You are like a sanctuary for roosters. Because I don't know if anyone knows this, but usually roosters get the really crappy end of the stick of stuff. If too many roosters in someone's flock is not good. So usually, you know, it's into the soup they go. But Ashley takes them in. She took two of my roosters. I didn't know that they were both roosters at that time. But you just see all the roosters walking around, all the chickens walking around, literally like sheep. You do have llamas?
We have one alpaca.
One alpaca, yeah. It was just like, you know, that's what I'd like to see the world like. Everybody living together. Ash, has been a slice having you here. It's good to see you again. It's been a while, so thanks for coming.
Yeah.